The twin suns of the distant planet Ratos blazed across the endless sky, casting long shadows over the ancient combat arena. Known as the cradle of intergalactic warriors, the planet had drawn fighters from every corner of the galaxy, all eager to prove their worth. Among these warriors stood Nara, a young human, dwarfed by the towering aliens surrounding her. Dressed in simple combat attire, her brown eyes held a quiet determination as she adjusted the strap of the mysterious relic on her wrist, a gift from her father, whose legacy had brought her here. The combat trials on Ratos were no ordinary test of skill. The best of the best fought here, and the planet's elite warriors rarely showed mercy, especially to humans, who were often seen as fragile and weak by other species. Today, Nero was set to face Rathor, a legendary alien samurai from the Ratorian Empire. His name was whispered with reverence throughout the galaxy. His victories were countless, his skills unmatched. He had made it clear to all that he viewed humans as lesser beings. Rathor stood at the opposite end of the grand arena, his imposing figure encased in ancient, polished armor that gleamed under the light of the twin suns. His katana, a blade forged from celestial metals, was already unsheathed, its energy humming with life. He towered over Nera, and from behind his helmet, his cold, disdainful eyes locked onto her. "You've made a mistake coming here, human," Rathor sneered, his voice booming with arrogance. "You think you can stand against me? You are nothing but an insect beneath my boot." Nara said nothing. Her fingers brushed against the relic on her wrist, feeling its pulse, soft and steady. It had been passed down from her father, who once fought in these same trials. He had never told her the full story of its power, only that it would reveal itself when the time was right. Her purpose here was clear: honor her father's legacy, prove her worth, and discover the relic's secret. As the crowd of alien spectators murmured in anticipation, the gong sounded, signaling the start of the match. Rathor wasted no time. He charged forward, his katana raised high, shimmering with lethal energy. The ground trembled beneath his feet as he closed the distance between them in a blur of speed. Nara's heart raced, but her body reacted faster than her mind. She sidestepped, narrowly avoiding the blade as it sliced through the air where she had stood moments before. The audience gasped. Humans weren't supposed to be able to dodge Rathor's opening strike. Rathor paused, surprised by her agility. He smirked, though his eyes narrowed in frustration. "So you can dance, but this is no place for tricks." Nara remained calm, her feet light on the ground. She knew that one wrong move would end her. But this wasn't just about dodging. She had to find a way to win, to show him, and everyone else, that humans were not to be underestimated. Rathor swung again, faster this time. His blade crackled with energy as it cut through the air. Nora ducked, rolled, and came up behind him. For a moment, their eyes met, hers full of resolve, his filled with disbelief. She was outmaneuvering him, something no one had done before. But she knew this was only the beginning. Rathor was far from finished. Rathor, now visibly irritated, adjusted his stance. His arrogance began to give way to seriousness as he realized Nero wasn't just some fragile human. His katana hummed with power as he prepared for another assault, his movements now more calculated and deadly. Nara, breathing heavily, felt the weight of her situation. Her body was fast, but Rathor's strength was overwhelming. If she kept dodging, she would tire out before long. She needed a plan. Her father's relic was her only hope, but its true nature was still a mystery to her. Without warning, Rathor lunged again, his strikes faster and more aggressive. Nora countered, her movements becoming more fluid as she relied on her training and instincts. The clash of Rathor's blade against the arena floor echoed through the stadium, each missed strike causing sparks to fly. With every attack, Nera narrowly escaped, leaving Rathor increasingly frustrated. "You are testing my patience, human," he growled, his voice low and menacing. But Nera was focused. With each step, she could feel the relic on her wrist growing warmer, its pulse matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. Something inside it was stirring, but she couldn't afford to be distracted. Raytho, sensing her moment of hesitation, struck with a power unlike anything Nora had seen before. His katana glowed with an intense blue light, and he brought it down with the force of a falling star. Nora's reflexes kicked in, and she raised her arms to shield herself just as the relic activated. A burst of energy erupted from the relic, forming a protective barrier around her. The katana's strike hit the shield, sending shockwaves through the arena. The crowd gasped in awe as the barrier absorbed Raytho's attack, leaving Nora unharmed. Raytho staggered back, his eyes wide with shock. What is this?" he muttered, staring at the relic. Naira, equally surprised, looked down at her wrist. The relic's energy was now visible, a faint, glowing aura that surrounded her. She didn't fully understand its power, but she could feel it, something ancient and powerful, waiting to be unlocked. "I'm not here to fight for your respect," Nera said, her voice steady. "I'm here for something much bigger." Raytho's face twisted in anger. "You'll regret those words." He raised his katana once more, but this time Nera was ready. The relic's power surged through her, giving her the strength and speed she needed. As Raytho charged, she met him head-on, her movements a blur of grace and precision. The fight was far from over. The clash between Raytho and Nera grew more intense as the battle raged on, their movements a blur of power and agility. The crowd, captivated by the unprecedented spectacle, watched in awe as the young human girl defied every expectation. Raytho, once so confident in his superiority, now found himself on the defensive. Nora could feel the energy of the relic surging through her, guiding her movements. Every time Raytho swung his katana, she sensed where his attack would land and moved with an almost supernatural grace to avoid it. But this power wasn't limitless, and she knew she had to find a way to finish the fight before her strength waned. Raytho, now furious, unleashed a flurry of strikes, each one more desperate and powerful than the last. His katana crackled with raw energy, the ground around them trembling with the force of his blows. Nera ducked, weaved, and blocked, her body moving as if it were in perfect harmony with the relic. But even as she parried his attacks, she could sense something deeper within the relic, a power far greater than she had yet tapped into. "You dare stand against me, human?" Raytho snarled, his voice filled with rage. "I will show you why no one dares challenge the Raytorian Empire." With a roar, Raytho thrust his katana forward, aiming directly for Nera's heart. This time, Nera didn't dodge. Instead, she raised her arm, and the relic pulsed with a brilliant light, forming a shield of energy that absorbed the blow. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the arena, but Nera stood firm, her eyes locked on Raytho's. The samurai staggered back, disbelief etched across his face. "What is this power?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and fury. Nara glanced down at the relic, the warm glow of its energy enveloping her. "This relic," she began, her voice calm and steady, "is more than just a tool. It's a key, passed down through generations of my family. My father once told me that it holds the power of an ancient force, one that could shift the balance of the galaxy, but I never truly understood what that meant until now." Raytho's eyes narrowed, his arrogance giving way to a flicker of fear. "You think some ancient artifact will save you? I am Raytho, the undefeated samurai of Raytos. No relic can protect you from my wrath." Nora shook her head. "This isn't about you, Raytho. This power, it's not something you could ever understand. You fight for pride, for dominance. But I fight for something far greater, for the future of my people." With that, Nera surged forward, her speed enhanced by the relic's energy. Raytho swung his katana in a wide arc, but Nera was already ahead of him, dodging effortlessly and landing a swift blow to his side. The crowd gasped as Raytho stumbled, clutching his ribs in pain. For the first time in his life, the alien samurai was on the verge of defeat. You will pay for this. Raitha growled, his voice thick with anger. He raised his katana high, preparing to unleash his most powerful technique, a move so devastating that it was forbidden in most arenas. Nara's eyes widened as she sensed the gathering energy around Raitha. She knew she had to act fast. The relic pulsed on her wrist, and without fully understanding how, she reached deep within herself, calling upon its hidden power. The air around her shimmered as the relic responded, its energy flowing through her like a river of light. As Raitha brought his katana down with a deafening roar, Nero raised her arm once more, and the relic exploded with energy, forming a shield so powerful that it not only blocked Raitha's strike, but sent him flying across the arena. The crowd erupted in shock as Raitha crashed into the ground, his katana clattering to the floor beside him. He struggled to rise, his once imposing figure now battered and broken. His arrogance had been his downfall. Nara, breathing heavily, approached him, the relic still glowing faintly on her wrist. She looked down at him, not with triumph, but with a quiet sense of understanding. "You never understood what this was really about, Raitha," she said softly. "You fought to prove your strength, but strength isn't everything. My father taught me that true power comes from understanding, and from knowing when to fight and when to stop." Raitha glared up at her, his pride shattered. "You think you've won, human? This is far from over." But Nera shook her head. "It is over. You've lost, not just this fight, but the respect of the people you sought to dominate. You've been defeated by a human, someone you deemed unworthy. And now, you must live with that." With those words, Nera turned her back on Raitha and walked toward the exit of the arena. The crowd, still in shock, began to murmur amongst themselves. For the first time in its history, the arena of Ratos had seen a human emerge victorious against one of its greatest champions. As Nera left the arena, she felt the weight of the relic on her wrist. The power it held was immense, but it also carried a great responsibility. She knew this was only the beginning of her journey, and that whatever lay ahead would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But for now, she had proven herself, not just to Raitha, but to herself. The aftermath of Nera's victory echoed throughout the planet of Ratos. News of the human girl's triumph over the undefeated Raitha spread like wildfire, leaving the alien aristocracy in disbelief. As Nera walked through the corridors of the combat halls, she felt the eyes of the other warriors on her. Some were filled with admiration, others with envy, but none dared challenge her now. But her journey was far from over. The relic on her wrist had revealed a fragment of its power, but Nera sensed there was much more it hadn't shown her yet, and she wasn't the only one who realized this. As Nera approached the chambers where the combatants rested, she was intercepted by a figure cloaked in shadows. Tall and imposing, the figure blocked her path, their eyes glowing faintly beneath the hood. "You've done well, human," the figure said, but a voice low and ominous. "But you're playing with forces you don't fully understand." Nora tensed, her hand instinctively moving toward the relic. "Who are you?" she demanded. The figure chuckled softly. "That's not important. What matters is the power you now possess. That relic, it's more than just a weapon. It's a key, and there are those who would do anything to take it from you." Nara narrowed her eyes. "What do you know about it?" The figure stepped closer, their presence unnerving. "I know that it was never meant for human hands, and I know that its power will come at a cost, one that you may not be willing to pay." Nara clenched her fists, feeling the warmth of the relic against her skin. "I don't care what it costs. My father entrusted this to me, and I will see his mission through." The figure's eyes flickered with amusement. "Brave words, human, but be careful. The power you wield has a will of its own, and it may not align with yours." Before Nora could respond, the figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving her standing alone in the dimly lit corridor. She felt a chill run down her spine. The relic's power had brought her victory, but it had also drawn the attention of dangerous forces, And now, more than ever, she knew that her journey was just beginning. Nora's footsteps echoed through the ancient halls of the Praetorian combat arena as she made her way toward her quarters, her thoughts heavy with the shadowy figure's warning. The victory over Rathel had been monumental, but it had also opened a door to forces far beyond her comprehension. The relic's power pulsed softly on her wrist, as if sensing the tension in the air. Whatever it was, it had drawn attention, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what came next. As she approached her chamber, the doors suddenly slid open, revealing a group of alien council members waiting for her. Their stern faces and ornate robes made it clear that this wasn't a social visit. Nera of Earth, one of them spoke, his voice cold and authoritative. "You have disrupted the balance of the trials. You have wielded power that was not meant for you." Nara stood her ground, her eyes meeting the counselor's gaze. "I fought fairly and within the rules of the trials. If you have a problem with me, speak plainly." The counselor narrowed his eyes. "That relic you carry, it was forged by an ancient race long forgotten by most of the galaxy. Its power is not something to be taken lightly, and we cannot allow you to wield it without understanding its true nature." Naira's hand instinctively went to the relic, feeling its warmth against her skin. "I understand enough to know that it chose me. And if it's so dangerous, why wasn't I warned before entering the trials?" The counselor stepped forward, his voice growing harsher. "You are an outsider human. We owe you no explanations. But know this, the relic you carry is a key to a power that could tip the balance of the galaxy. If you do not relinquish it, you will face consequences beyond your understanding." Naira's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady. "I won't give it up. This relic was my father's, and I will honor his legacy by unlocking its full potential." The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. The council members exchanged glances, clearly unsettled by Naira's resolve. The lead counselor finally spoke again, his voice soft but dangerous. "Then you leave us no choice." Before Naira could react, the doors behind her slammed shut, and the room was plunged into darkness. The air grew cold, and a deep, ominous hum filled the chamber. From the shadows, figures emerged, Praetorian guards, armed with energy weapons and towering over Nara. Their presence made it clear that the council wasn't interested in negotiation. Nora clenched her fists, feeling the relic's pulse quicken. The power within her began to surge, responding to the danger around her. Her eyes locked on the counselor. "You think you can intimidate me," she said, her voice firm. "You've already seen what this relic can do. If you want a fight, I'll give you one." The lead counselor's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Very well, human. Let's see how far your arrogance takes you." With a sudden burst of energy, the guards charged toward Nara, their weapons aimed directly at her. But Nera was ready. The relic on her wrist glowed brighter than ever before, and as the first guard swung his weapon at her, she raised her arm, summoning the energy within the relic. A powerful barrier of light erupted around her, deflecting the attack and sending the guard flying backward. The other guards hesitated for a moment, clearly taken aback by the sheer force of the relic's power. But they didn't retreat. With renewed determination, they regrouped and charged again, this time in unison. Naira's heart pounded in her chest as she moved with lightning speed, dodging and parrying their attacks with an agility that surprised even her. The relic's energy coursed through her, guiding her every move. With each strike, she countered, disarming her attackers and forcing them to retreat, but she could feel the strain of the battle taking its toll on her body. The lead counselor watched from a distance, his eyes narrowing as Naira continued to hold her own. He raised his hand, signaling to the remaining guards. "Finish her," he commanded coldly. As the guards closed in, Naira felt the relic's energy pulse harder, almost as if it were urging her to release something even greater. She didn't fully understand how to control it yet, but she knew this was the moment to take a risk. Summoning every ounce of strength she had, she focused on the relic, willing it to unleash its full power. A blinding light filled the room, and a shockwave of energy exploded from Nara's body, knocking the guards off their feet and sending them crashing into the walls. The air crackled with raw power, and for a moment, everything was still. Nara stood in the center of the chaos, panting heavily. The relic's glow had dimmed slightly, but its energy was still present, still waiting to be called upon again. She looked up at the counselor, whose face was now twisted with a mixture of fear and anger. "You've underestimated me," Nara said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "And you've underestimated what this relic is capable of." The counselor glared at her, but before he could respond, a sudden voice echoed through the chamber, a voice familiar to Nara. "Enough." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was the same cloaked figure who had confronted Nara earlier. The council members fell silent as the figure approached, their presence commanding immediate attention. The figure looked at Nara, their eyes glowing faintly beneath the hood. "You've proven yourself human, but there is more at stake here than you realize. This relic, it's not just a weapon, it holds the key to a power that could reshape the galaxy itself." Nara frowned, still catching her breath. "What do you mean?" The figure stepped closer, their voice low and grave. "The relic is part of an ancient force, one that was sealed away long ago to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Your father understood this, which is why he left it in your care. But you must be careful. That power can consume you if you are not strong enough to control it." Nara's mind raced as she processed the figure's words. "So what do I do now?" The figure's eyes flickered with something resembling sympathy. "You must seek the rest of the relic's pieces. Only then will you truly understand its purpose and your role in the galaxy's future." Nara looked down at the relic on her wrist, its soft glow reflecting in her eyes. She had come to Ratos to prove herself, but now it seemed her journey was just beginning. The weight of her father's legacy pressed down on her shoulders, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. "Where do I find these pieces?" she asked. The figure stepped back into the shadows, their voice echoing as they disappeared from view. "You'll know when the time is right." Nara stood in the now empty chamber, the silence pressing in on her. She had won the battle, but the war for the relic's power, and for her own destiny, was just beginning. In the days that followed her victory, Nara became the subject of whispers throughout the halls of Ratos. The human girl who had defeated Ratha and stood against the council was now seen as a force to be reckoned with. Warriors who once scoffed at her now treated her with a newfound respect, though there were still those who viewed her as an outsider, undeserving of the power she wielded. Nara spent her time in the training grounds, honing her skills and trying to understand more about the relic that had chosen her. Each day, she could feel its energy growing stronger, but with that strength came a sense of unease. The relic was powerful, yes, but it was also unpredictable, and as the cloaked figure had warned, it had the potential to consume her if she wasn't careful. One afternoon, as she trained in solitude, Nara was approached by an unexpected visitor. Ratha, the once arrogant alien samurai, stood before her, his expression unreadable. His armor, though still gleaming, seemed less imposing now, and the arrogance that had once defined him was gone. "I came to speak with you," Ratha said, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. Nara straightened, unsure of what to expect. "What do you want?" Ratha paused for a moment before speaking again. "You defeated me, fairly. I have come to acknowledge that, but I also came to offer you a warning." Nara raised an eyebrow. "A warning?" Ratha nodded. "That relic you carry, it's powerful, yes, but I've seen what power like that can do to a warrior. It corrupts, twists them into something they're not. If you're not careful, it will happen to you too." Nara considered his words. She knew he was right, in part. The relic's power was immense, but it was also dangerous. But she couldn't let fear stop her from fulfilling her father's mission. "I understand the risks," Nara said, "but this relic was given to me for a reason. I won't let it control me." Ratha studied her for a moment, then gave a small nod of respect. "Then I wish you luck, human. You'll need it." With that, Rapho turned and walked away, leaving Nira alone once more.